Hello, my name's Aviva, and today I'm going to share with you a bunch of romance recommendations with the guy falls first trope. So if you're new to my channel, then you might not be aware that for a while now, I've been making a bunch of these type of videos. Like I pick a trope and then I give you a bunch of recommendations that fall into it, like enemies to lovers, fake dating, no one caught my eye until I met you, it's always been you, grumpy sunshine. I have done so many. And if you want to check out all of the videos that I have done in the past, I'll make sure that the playlist for them is linked down below. But today I basically wanted to do a bunch of books where the guy falls first. It is super simple. It's when the guy catches feelings or falls in love with the girl before the girl falls in love with the guy. I love this trope. I think that it is so sweet. I feel like every single book you read has a different dynamic going on, but specifically when the guy falls in love with the girl first, there is just something about it, and this is one of my all-time favorite tropes. I think I fell in love with this trope specifically when I originally read Throne of Glass and A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. Both of these series definitely has this trope in it at some point. I don't really want to say anything because of spoilers, but I mean, Dorian, Rhysand, Sam, even Kale at some points. I mean, okay, I said I wasn't going to say anything, but basically these series are filled with this trope. So first up, I have the Addicted / Calloway Sister series by Krista Becker-Ritchie. So this is a collection of 10 books. You're following 6 characters and 3 different romances. And happens to be 2 out of the 3 romances fit into this category. You have Lillian Lowe and Connor and Rose, and both of them, the guy fell first. So you start off this story with Lily and Lowe, who are both addicts. Lily is a sex addict and Lowe is an alcoholic. And they are basically both fake dating each other so that they can have their addictions and do what they want without their family on their backs or knowing what they're actually going through. And then throughout the series, you're basically going to follow them as, you know, they get over their addictions, they try to like handle it, and obviously at the same time, they're gonna fall in love. They've been best friends since they were children, but when they were in like their senior year of high school, they started fake dating, and then obviously the fake dating is going to turn into real dating. And then throughout the books, you're also going to meet Connor and Rose and Daisy and Reich. And happens to be Connor and Rose have known each other their whole lives also, and one day they're going to start dating, and it kind of does feel like the guy fell first in that scenario too. So in this series, if you are willing to commit and you are a fan of Guy Falls First, then I'm telling you, you are not going to be disappointed by this series. And also, if you want to know more about this series, how to read it, what you could expect from it, everything like that, I'm going to make sure that a playlist for it is linked down below, because I did a how to read it video as well as, you know, a bunch of vlogs for every single book in this series. Next, I have Indigo Ridge by Devney Perry, which is the first book that I read by this author, and I was a huge fan. This is a really cute, really simple, small town romance. You're following this girl who just got a job as the new chief of police in this tiny town in middle of Montana, and one night she goes to a bar and she ends up picking up this guy that she thought was just passing through. They have a one-night stand, and then it's like a week later and they're at lunch and they realize that he actually wasn't passing through, he actually lives there, and they kind of made a mistake because they didn't want to sleep with anybody that would cause complications because it's a tiny town sort of vibe. But obviously they really liked each other, so they're going to have a romance. Also, there's a mystery going on with this book. Basically, a girl was killed on this guy's property. He owns like a very big ranch, and then like she is going to have to be on his property a lot to try and figure out the mystery because she's the new chief of police sort of vibes. But basically in this story, the romance aspect is that, you know, they start sleeping with each other, thinks it's just going to be like, you know, they're going to sleep together, they're not going to catch feelings, but then the guy obviously starts to catch feelings and he can't really help himself. He now wants a relationship with her. Next, I have From Lukov with Love by Marianne Zapata, which is a very slow burn romance. This is the 4th book that I read by this author, and oh my god, it is my favorite by her so far. I still have a bunch to read by her. I'll get to it eventually, but for now, this is my number 1. You're basically following this enemies to lovers sports romance sort of vibe. These 2 people are professional ice skaters, and they've hated each other for a very long time. Everybody knows they don't really get along, and then one day, for some reason, they're going to end up getting partnered up with each other, and now they have to work with each other. Obviously, forced proximity vibes, everything like that. And obviously, you know, there's going to be a romance slowly but surely, and happens to be the guy falls first in this book, and oh my god, it was amazing. Also, The Wall of Winnipeg by Mariana Zapata fits into this trope. You're basically following this guy who is a pro football player and then this girl who is his assistant. And basically, she absolutely hates her job. She hates working for this guy. He doesn't appreciate her. He's a grump. He's really hard to be around. So one day she decides to finally quit her job and start her own graphic design business. So she's like, adios, goodbye. And then a month later, he happens to show up at her doorstep and is like, you have to come back. I need you. And then the story goes from there. I don't really want to say anything else only because it's spoilery, but basically the guy definitely falls first in this book. And if you are down for a very, very, very slow burn, then I highly recommend this one. Next, I have Dear Ava by Isla Madam Mills. So this is a new adult book that takes place in high school. So don't ask me why there is a naked man on the cover. It makes absolutely no sense. So there are trigger warnings in this book for sexual assault. And if you're cool with that, then I highly recommend this one. It's also somewhat of a sports romance. You're basically following this girl who a long time ago got sexually assaulted by one of the football players in her school, but she doesn't know who it was. So once she is like finally better and everything like that, she decides to go back to school and try to find out who it was that hurt her. And when she gets there, she's basically getting bullied by everybody there, being like, go away, we don't want you to find out who it is, like we don't want you here, you're horrible, etc., etc. And then one day she gets a note in her locker that was privately written to her of like, dear Ava, I've liked you for a really long time, I'm on the football team, but I'm not the one who did it, I would love to be there for you. And she's like, I don't trust anybody from the football team, so adios. And then happens to be you're also following the guy's point of view, and then you get to watch him as he basically gets closer to her and they slowly find out who did this to her, and they're also going to have a romance. So it is a very cute story. I very much liked it, and if you are cool with the trigger warning and a little bit of the heavier topic sort of vibe, then I highly recommend this one. Next, I have The Deal by Elle Kennedy. So I'm holding up the first book in this series, but I'm sure that there is another book in this series that the guy falls first in. I just couldn't think of it off the top of my head. There are 8 books within this series and its spin-off series, but specifically Garrett and Hannah's story, which is The Deal, is a fake dating romance where basically this guy is on the hockey team in his college and he's not doing so well in a class. So he decides to ask one of the girls that is doing really well in this class to tutor him, and in exchange, I don't know, he'll do something. And happens to be she's not really interested in doing that. She doesn't really want to have anything to do with him, and happens to be she has a crush on somebody else. Oh, so that is what he ends up doing for her. Basically, he's going to promise to fake date her to get her crush jealous, and in exchange she is going to tutor him, and then they're going to do all of this, and obviously he's going to fall for her before she actually falls for him. Next, I have Playing with Fire by LJ Shen, which I recommend looking up trigger warnings for this one before you pick it up. But it's basically about this girl who has a lot of burns on her. She used to be very beautiful, and then she was in a fire, and now like half of her face is like full of scars, her body, everything like that. And she is extremely self-conscious about that. And basically she works at a food truck, and she's also in college. And one day, this very popular guy in her college who happens to be an underground fighter comes to her food truck and asks for a job. So then they're going to start to work together, and they're slowly going to become friends, and then obviously it's going to turn into a romance. And happens to be this guy falls first before the girl falls for him, and he's dealing with a lot of stuff also. And this book definitely has a more serious tone to it. If you've read November 9 by Colleen Hoover and you enjoyed that book, you probably very much enjoy this. But basically, I enjoy this book. It is very good. I mean, it's not the best book in the world, but it's pretty solid read. And if you like When the Guy Falls First, then I recommend checking this one out. Next, I have Voyeur by Fiona Cole, which is an age gap teacher-student forbidden romance. You're basically following this girl who needed money for tuition for her college, and she basically decides to start working at this sex club called Voyeur, where people can basically request to watch her do specific sexual things behind a one-way mirror. So if she accepts it, she's going to go and do what they ask for, but she can't see who really accepted her because, they're behind a one-way mirror, and it's very private sort of vibes. And basically, this guy comes into the club. He's a member there for a while. He sees her and he starts to get fascinated by her. And then he's also a teacher. So, it's the first day of classes. And who do you know walks into one of his classes? This girl that he's been watching at this sex club. So then obviously they're going to end up having a age gap forbidden romance sort of vibes. And she doesn't really know who he is right away, even though he knows who she is, all of that sort of stuff. And obviously he falls first. Next, I have There Are No Saints, which is the first book in a duet by Sophie Lark. It's There Are No Saints and then There Is No Devil. And this is a really dark, really taboo serial killer romance. You're following this guy who is a serial killer, but also a really famous artist. And basically, this girl kind of gets on his radar and he ends up stalking her and obviously falling in love with her sort of vibe. So it's really taboo, really different than anything I've ever read before. But I highly recommend it if you are down for the dark and crazy sort of vibes, and also you like when a guy falls first, because obviously he starts stalking her and he gets overly obsessed with her even before she knows who he actually is. Next, I have The Maddest Obsession by Danielle Laurie, which is the second book in the Maid series, and happens to be, this is my least favorite book from the series, but it was still pretty solid. I just liked the other two books more. There was an arranged marriage and a kidnapping romance, and that was just more up my alley. This book is it was never the right time until now sort of thing. I don't really know how to say that, like, yeah, it was never the right time sort of vibes. But anyway, this guy has really been in love with this girl for a really long time, and she was married at some point, and then she just wasn't available. And basically in this book, they finally get their chance to be together, and he definitely falls for her first. And it kind of does have a little bit of that stalkerish vibes going on to it, because he's kind of been obsessed with her for a while. Next, I have The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood, which is a very popular book. So I'd be surprised if you haven't heard about it before, but in case you haven't, I will explain it to you. It is basically a fake dating book where this girl basically has to show her friend that she is over one of her exes so that her friend who has a crush on him can start dating him. So she ends up walking up to this random guy and giving him a kiss on the lips, and then the story is going to take off, and basically these two people are going to start to fake date. So she happens to be a PhD student and he is a professor in her field, and anyway, they're going to have a fake dating scenario, and obviously they're going to fall for each other, but the guy falls first. Next, I have The Spanish Love Deception by Eleanor Mez, which is another fake dating scenario book, but it's also an enemies to lovers. This girl basically has to go home to her sister's wedding that's going to be in Spain, and she basically told her family that she's bringing home a date, but she doesn't actually have one. So she's complaining to her friend at work of oh my God, what am I going to do? I need to find a fake boyfriend. And then this guy who overhears her walks up to her and is like, you could take me, I'll be your fake date. And happens to be her and this guy do not get along. They very much don't like each other and they work together. So throughout the first half of the book, you're going to follow them as they are in the workplace environment, and you get to see how and why they don't get along. And he is at the same time trying to convince her to take him as her fake date. And then in the second half of the book, they're actually going to go to Spain to her sister's wedding, and they're going to fake date, and they are going to fall in love, and happens to be the guy is going to fall first. Next, I have The Hating Game by Sally Thorne, which is kind of similar to The Spanish Love Deception because it's also a workplace environment, enemies to lovers, but it doesn't have any of that fake dating stuff going on. So you probably have seen this book around because a movie just came out about it, but in case you're not familiar with it, it's basically about these two people who work together, and happens to be their desks are facing each other, so they're always in each other's faces and they really don't get along. Everybody in the office knows that they hate each other. They're always messing with each other and things like that. And then basically one day they're both offered to get this promotion, and whoever ends up getting it is going to be the boss of the other person. So then the story really takes off when they start to really fight against each other for this promotion, because they obviously don't want the other person to end up becoming their boss. So it's a really good story, and in this book, the guy falls first. And the last book I'm going to share with you is Only When It's Us by Chloe Lieza. So I hope I'm saying her name right, but if I'm not, then sorry. Anyway, this is a college sports romance. This girl is on the soccer team and she's not doing so well in one of her classes. So the professor tells her to go and get the notes from the person sitting next to her. And happens to be the guy sitting next to her is late deaf. He can't hear her. He only communicates through text. And basically she gets really annoyed when he's basically ignoring her, except he didn't actually hear her. So they start off on really bad terms once they figure out whatever happened. They're not really two people who get along very well, and then they end up getting partnered for a project in the class, and now they have to work together, but they don't really get along. So it ends up being this frenemies sort of vibe turned into lovers. They're always bickering with each other, but they somewhat turn into friends, and then obviously it's going to turn into a romance, and happens to be the guy falls first in this book. But anyway, that is all the books that I had to share with you. I love this trope. I hope that you found some good recommendations in this video. If you have any books that have this trope in it that I didn't recommend in this video, then please leave me a comment down below, because I'm always looking for good recommendations. Also, if you have a specific trope that you wanted me to make a video of that I haven't done already, then please leave me a comment down below, because if I have enough recs for the trope that you're asking for, I will try to make a video of it for you. But anyway, if you enjoyed watching this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're not currently subscribed to my channel, hit that subscribe button. And anyway, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, enjoy reading.